Hey everyone, thank you for joining us today. I'm excited for these three conference preview panels we've got leading up to the conference. As many of you know, the spring virtual conference will be April 19th through 21st. It's going to be a big 3-day event, 50 plus speakers. These are for the speakers you get to look forward to. And also big thank you, well, Matt, big thank you for kind of being one of the presenting sponsors for the conference. Also thank you to Precision Fermentation and White Labs. They are huge supporters of CVP and they help make these fantastic events possible. But I like to start with basic intros. And Doug, you are to the right of me. So tell everybody who you are and what you do and what you'll be talking about during the event.
Well, my name is Doug Piper, as you said. I'm with Gourmet Brewing, and we're into fine foods and fine beverages. This has been a journey that I started as I got, well, I kind of fell into the trap of home brewing. Realized very quickly that I needed to do some. Ooh, we're getting an echo. Anybody hearing that? Nope. Maybe it's on my end. Anyway, fell into the trap of home brewing. Realized very quickly I needed to figure out something, I guess, to understand what I was brewing better, and went down the Cicerone Road, BJCP beer judges. And in my path of learning, what I like to do is get subject matter experts to talk about particular subjects. So we've actually got one tonight. We're going to be talking specifically about coffees and coffee infusions into beer. It should be great.
And what will you be talking about during the conference?
We're going to be talking about influencers, and I'm fortunate enough to have Caitlin Gipple joining me from Holidaily Brewing, and Caitlin has a fantastic insight into working with influencers to grow her brewery. They do allergy-free beers. Gluten-free is what most of us know, but they kind of take it a step further and look into all allergy-free beers. So they've, it's a pretty specific product and they're trying to branch out. So she's learned some really novel ways to work with influencers, and she works with me. And I just thought we'd team up and kind of share both sides of the equation, what influencers are looking for and then what breweries are looking for, and kind of take questions.
I think that's a fantastic topic. We had a thread in CVP just the other day about if breweries should or should not use and work with influencers. So I'm really excited to hear the insight both you and Caitlin have. Now, Pulkit, excited to have you today. You're a little bit closer to me now. I know when we first started talking, you were out west. Now you're living in Miami, I believe. So hopefully someday we're sharing a beer in person.
Absolutely. Got my first shot in, so almost there. Looking forward to the CBC this year as well. So for everyone, my name is Pulkit Agrawal. I am the founder and CEO of The Fifth Ingredient. You may know us also with our brands, Beer 30 and Bucha 30, which are these all-in-one data management software systems for breweries to use to track their data from start to finish, from grain to glass. And I've actually been working with Andrew and CVP for well over a year and a half now, which has been awesome to see, just pre-COVID, just all the things that were leading up to CVC that year, and now actually getting ready for CVC 2021. So it's been really cool. And Andrew, thanks for setting up these virtual talks. And yeah, so this year, this spring session, I'm going to be talking about, again, data as always, but the spin on it this time around is really looking into what it is that customers and breweries want to do when it comes to quality and efficiency issues. A lot of people just get super overwhelmed when they start looking at their data that they're capturing, like paper logs, spreadsheets, and they don't necessarily know what to start doing in order to see if things are trending well or not, right? And that's really where things like actual proper data management comes into effect. And what we're going to do in the talk is actually go into a proper framework that people should start utilizing in general, regardless of having a data management system or not, when it comes to tracking quality and efficiency. And then from there, we're going to start understanding how to dive into that framework and give some best practices on how breweries can really implement this to understand just what's happening when it comes to consistency, quality issues, or then even diving in on the cost of goods that goes into each product. So it really comes full circle, giving people the problem, going into like the key principles on what the objective should be and what the roadmap should be for a brewery, and then kind of how to implement it.
And Pulkit, I'm very passionate about the business side of the industry. And I mentioned to you off air that I'm seeing the word data appear more and more. Just looking at the presentation submissions we had for, let's say, our April 2020 conference versus the one now, I think I might have had a couple that included the word data. And this go round, we had quite a bit. It could have been the most used word in all the proposals.
Nice.
Why do you think that is? Are breweries starting to value data a little bit more than the past? And if so, why do you think so?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's exactly right, that a lot of breweries are starting to use data more often. And I think it's really because it's that plateau that started to happen when it comes to the brewing space, right? Where you hit that saturation element. And this was our hypothesis when we started the fifth ingredient in Beer 30 was, well, the breweries that are going to be successful are the ones that can do two things, right? Ones that can use data to understand that they have consistent quality, and two, the ones that can use data to make sure that they reduce their costs. And I think what's happening now is that as breweries are opening up, as we start getting into potentially post-COVID world, people are realizing that the competition is getting even more fierce with the breweries that are still around. And so the only way to keep that happening and be a profitable business is keep making good beer, because if you don't make good beer, you've lost my business and I'm just going to go right next door to the brewery that's there. And two, as a brewery owner, you need to have proper cost of goods and margins, especially when you're looking at businesses for the last year or so having to have decreases in sales when it comes to the taproom and bar side. So I think putting those two aspects together really dives in with why breweries now want to start using all this data to understand exactly what it is that they're looking at, where their profitability is, and what's diving in for consistency. And it's only going to get more involved from here with more and more data plays and more data attributes that people are going to start looking at.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you fighting the good fight. Now, Kyle, on to you. Tell everybody a little bit about what you do in the industry.
So my company turns 3 this week, and
Congratulations.
Thank you. And 3 years ago, I went into work. It was Easter Monday, and there was a big letter from a lawyer being like, "You don't have a job anymore." And I was the equipment designer for a small manufacturing company that specialized in craft breweries. So I started helping people from that. So it was a very stressful times. I had a lot of sleepless nights because I'm like, how the hell am I going to pull this off? I have a lot of people who are very upset and very hurt. So what I've been doing is I kind of do a lot of stainless steel. I do a lot of consulting advice. This last year has been odd because no one's planning to build a brewery or expand a brewery. So I've been doing a little bit of like helping pharmaceutical in terms of like hand sanitizer and stuff like that. And then I've also been giving more direct action advice because someone's just like, I have this problem. I don't know how to fix it. Like they're like, we're making this type of beer. We're trying to do this, but we can't make it the way we want to make it or make it as efficiently as we want it. So that is kind of what I do overall. And I've also been teaching by correspondence for the brewing school here in Canada. And so that's what I do on a day-to-day basis, is help people find stainless steel or help them figure out their process problems.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining us, Kyle. And on to Matt. You live in Maine, the only state on the East Coast I have yet to get to enjoy. When I was supposed to go a couple of years ago, there was a ticket to Denver that was right around the time of GABF. And it was literally, my wife and I flew out there for like $150 for 2 people. So we had to choose Denver as opposed to go seeing Acadia right by you. But hopefully we make it up that way soon. But in the meantime, could you tell everybody what you do at River Drive?
I can't say Denver was a terrible choice, but I do appreciate you leaving the best for last. So we do appreciate that. So I own River Drive. We are a cooperage that specializes in used barrels. I explain it a lot to the outside world of kind of like used cars, just without the sketchy salespeople. So we buy, sell, repair, recondition, recycle, and repair wine and whiskey barrels to and from breweries, wineries, and distilleries all around the world. Our business model is really, it's less about, I want to sell you a barrel. It's more about, I want to help you improve your aging program and make sure that you understand the ins and outs of your aging program so you can produce a better product. Because I know if you're going to do better, then at the end of the day, we're going to do better. And that's kind of really, the game there. So, I started the company around 2008, mostly more in the woodworking side of things and reclaimed lumber. And around 2010 to 2012, the wooden barrel thing just kind of naturally sort of fell into our laps. And right around there was when breweries were really taking off with barrel aging. But the brewers, respectively, they knew how to make beer and they knew how to run a good brewery, but they didn't know a lot about the oak aspect. So there's a lot of questions out there and a lot of information that people were really thirsty for. So we kind of transitioned over just a few short years and catered a lot to the breweries and their aging programs, and came up with ways that we can help them improve, not just from a barrel perspective, but wood and aging all the way around. So from barrels all the way down to staves and inserts and wood chips and so on and so forth.
No, I always love our conversations because you're so passionate about what you do in the industry and you put so much thought into everything that you plan out. But one thing I want to talk to all four of you about is, how you've stayed engaged with breweries through this pandemic. And Matt, while I got you, I want to dive into something with you before we let the others have a chance to throw out their ideas. We have some fun conversations. And I know recently I sent you a link about a shipwreck that was off the coast of Argentina where barrels were being stored underwater by a brewery who was aging the beer in those barrels. And what happened to those barrels?
So it made national news, and the more that I just had a Zoom conference actually with all those players down there about 2 weeks ago. So a local small brewery on the coast of Argentina, they wanted to do a cool experiment. They wanted to age barrels of beer underwater. In order to do that, you needed to do some scuba diving. So they partnered with their local scuba shop and scuba school to help them. And this was an experiment. So naturally, they then also partnered with the local university to also conduct a number of experiments underwater while they were doing this. So it was really, you don't understand this just by reading the news, but it was such a community effort with so much love and passion built into it. All the proceeds were going to the school, the scuba school, their students were helping. So it was literally a community coming together to do this project. About a week before they were scheduled to raise the barrels and empty them, the barrels were stolen. The cage that they were locked in was all undone and the barrels were gone. Clearly somebody thought they were getting something good. The brewers, very disappointing, but the brewers kind of chuckled a little bit. They're like, they're getting a bunch of barrels of flat beer that hasn't even blended yet. So, it was unique. And we're always on the lookout for cool and unique stuff. And I was able to reach out to all the parties involved. We had a great Zoom conference, and I said, listen, we want to make this happen again. I'm going to get you some barrels. I'm going to get them to your doorstep. I'm going to handle all the costs. And we're going to get them full of beer at your brewery, and we're going to sink them on it again. And you're going to have your project, and the community is going to benefit from it just in the same way that you guys had planned. And they were more than grateful, and I was super honored that they accepted, and they seemed very, very grateful for my offer. And I think I can't wait. I think it's going to be a really cool thing. We're going to make some videos of it, and it's actually, just to take it one step further, the boat, they put the barrels on a boat that was previously sunken to create an artificial reef. Well, they have another boat that they want to sink next to it to expand this reef. So now we've gone from I'm just going to send you some barrels to sink. Now we're going to load them on this boat. We're going to float the boat out. They're going to blow the boat up, sink it, and all this stuff. And I'm just like, this keeps getting better and better. And at the end of the day, we're helping the community. So it's the stuff like that I don't know where else in the world I could go to find, just such a story and such a unique concept and help people all the way.
Well, I think you failed to mention that you love scuba diving, and you'll actually be flying out to Argentina to take part of this process. You're going to have a nice little getaway, while you're helping them, with this experiment.
I don't take many personal vacations, but I do take a lot of business trips. And I certainly try and make the most of it. But that's how River Drive started. We started as a scuba diving company that then I was finding this timber underwater from the days of the river drives, a little foreshadowing there. And we were bringing this 100, 200-year-old logs up and milling up the wood and making cool stuff out of it. And that was the reclaimed lumber business I started. And like I said, then the wooden barrels just kind of fell into our lap, and the rest was history.
So now that Matt has dropped the mic on the three of you, any other cool ways that you've been connecting with breweries throughout the pandemic?
Well, before we leave, Matt, can we ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Doug.
So, Matt, one of the questions that I had is, what do you think the characteristics of the beer, recognizing it's underwater, so it's not going to have an oxygen or the oxygen aging is going to be far less. So what characteristics is anybody predicting these underwater aged beers to have?
So it's going to be interesting, I think. Because there's a bunch of different aspects that kind of roll in here. You're right. It's not going to have the oxygen aspect of it, but when you age beer or whiskey, you get the angel share. You get evaporation. Well, that goes both ways. So is some amount of ocean water going to work its way in? Is the salinity of the beer gonna increase, and by how much? But also, to what effect? If what are the currents like? What are the thermals in the currents like? Is there going to be much temperature change in there? Are there not going to be? Is it going to be a steady, cool, nice, cool environment, which is great for barrel aging, but at the same point, great for barrel aging beer. But at the same point, while warming beer up can get dangerous, those temperature fluctuations do aid in the aging. And then is the current going to have it? Is the tide? We actually work with a rum maker in the Cayman Islands it's called 42 fathoms, I believe, which is they anchor the barrels 42 fathoms deep. And those barrels in particular, they have their words, not mine, but they have what they call like a barrel condom that they wrap the barrels in so that the water doesn't penetrate it. But in that case, those barrels slosh around with the current, which changes. Jefferson's bourbon has an ocean-aged bourbon, which they load the barrels onto a freighter and send the freighter around the world. So again, going over the waves constantly sloshes it around. So it's going to have an effect. To answer your question, what exact effect? I don't know. I can guess maybe definitely a little bit of salinity aspect, but from that, I guess it's really I'm expecting a little more barrel, wood and or whatever was in the barrel, whatever used barrel we go with, because we're going to have that constant pressure. And if we do, in fact, have that water seeping in, it's going to be picking up all that wood and former spirits or wines that was in that barrel and driving it into the beer. So that's about my best guess for how it's going to change the beer.
So it's going to be interesting to find out. That's what I think I'm
very much.
Now, Pulkit, do you think there's any data points that Matt and his team down there should help monitor to kind of monitor through this process?
Yeah, that's actually pretty cool. No, this is a really cool project diving in with the underwater side. I had never actually thought about underwater barrel aging, so that's really cool. Are those beers actually going to be coming to the U.S. at all, or is it only going to be in Argentina? Or do you plan to bring some in your carry-on or checked in suitcase?
I am honestly not sure. I've already been warned about how the Argentina customs can or cannot be. So we're going to see if we can, how well we can get the barrels there in the first place. From there, I don't know. This is all very preliminary. It was literally a matter of days actually after that nationwide article came out about the fact that we chimed in with them. So it's very much in the work in progress. Hopefully we're going to get something going this fall, November, December, which is summertime for them down there, and we'll give it a go.
Sure. And I'm sure you can find some breweries in the U.S. as well that are interested in doing something like off the coast of San Diego, off the coast of Maine, that would want to do the same exact thing and just test it out and see what's happening with it.
So if you like scuba diving, if you like shipwrecks and barrel-aged beer, contact Matt at River Drive Cooperage today.
Nice.
So away from shipwrecks and beer, though, Doug, you stay on camera quite a bit. How have you been able to connect with breweries over the past year?
Well, people love good stories. And during the pandemic, we've run into a lot of Zoom fatigue, where it's just a bunch of talking heads. And, you might have a tasting, and it's just a bunch of people tasting, and there's not anything really interesting besides maybe following their conversation, which the more they taste, the probably less coherent it is. So I've tried to take a little bit of a different approach. And because people like good stories, they like important topics. So Charlie Bamsforth shared beer and health.
Who is also presenting at our virtual conference. So good name drop there.
Yeah, well, I mean, Charlie was just fantastic. And we've got another one scheduled with Charlie. He's just a great speaker, but that draws people together. And so maybe it's not so much about a particular brewery, but drawing us together on a common topic, just like what Matt was talking about. I think we all loved and could envision these barrels in the bottom of the ocean. Well, you know, it's not just about, and no diss on you, Pulkit, but it's not just about the data. We're all in it because we have a passion and we have a love for this. I also go the extra mile, and I feel like we drink with our eyes. So when I do an event, I've got a cinema camera that I use so we get a nice, beautiful image of whatever it is that we're drinking. Because, you know, it doesn't go over very well when you see somebody and they just pour something, they drink it and say, this is good. So I'd go to an extra length to have good cinematography, and so you can see a beautiful pour. And we have people like Julia Hertz, who unpacks the beer and talks about its nuances and tells its story. So the way I see breweries connecting is through these stories or these important topics. But, you know, there's a lot of confusion in the industry. They think, okay, well, I just want a regional influencer because I'm in Denver, Colorado, and I'm not reaching out any further than Denver, so why would I want an influencer in the Carolinas? Well, the reason you'd want an influencer in the Carolinas is most breweries want to be a destination. They want to be a place where somebody eventually goes. If all you do is talk to people who are right in your region, it's not, you're hurting your chances of becoming a destination brewery. So, you know, this is a great way to, you know, events like you've got here, Andrew, these are a great way to get us out, tell our stories. But what I try and do is teach people, you know, you've got to really improve your lighting. You've got to have great lighting when you do a video. You need somebody with a good camera to share your product and have some beautiful photography because we drink with our eyes. Our mics are really important. So I work with all my guests to upgrade their equipment, not necessarily have to buy anything, but to put a light here or there, try and improve things. Because if we're going to be on camera and if we're going to tell our story, again, we drink with our eyes. We listen with our eyes. It's all about, so good audio, good video, that's what's going to separate you from the others that are trying to do things virtually.
And Doug, for anyone listening after the fact on Spotify, Doug has the best video and audio of all of us right now. You look like you could be a TV news reporter. Your hair is slightly slicked back. You've got a nice, I want to say bookshelf, but it looks like a lot more than a bookshelf behind you. It's just a very, very nice setup you have going there. What is that painting right behind your right shoulder? Is it a painting? It's white.
This is a green screen. This is actually a bar in London. And so, you know, I found that important to set the tone. I'm changing it a little less than what I used to, but in the events, a lot of times I would, you know, use as my green screen something from the brewery that's there. Because again, well, I know green screens are not unusual anymore. This is a high-end green screen. This goes through an actual, you know, camera grade switcher. And so that's an important aspect. Again, you're trying to share a complete story. You want to be different than people just doing a Zoom call.
No, absolutely. Really great points there. How to stay relevant and engage with breweries and your fans during the pandemic and beyond. More importantly, I think that's a conversation for another day about how the importance of connecting virtually is going to be something we continue to have to do. Now, Pulkit, your turn. How have you managed to, one, engage with the breweries you're actively already working with, but also those, you know, you're looking to build relationships with? And one thing that I like that you've done, you've made a Facebook community just for breweries that you're working with already to keep the conversation going, to have everybody in one central location. How has that worked out for you?
Yeah, great point. That's actually what I was going to say. What we realized a couple of months ago was, you know, let's have a community of Beer 30 customers, Beer 30 Beach at 30 customers, and it's collectively just called the Beer 30 Legends Group. And it's been great because we have people from 9, 10, 11 different countries that are all on there, just checking out some of the big wins that are happening, right? That are going around. Like in Australia, for example, things are a lot different than the US when it comes to lockdown and when it comes to just the events that they're doing. And they're still having many awards. They're having a bunch of these different beer fests, etc., and just having this forum that people are able to show wins that are happening and reach out to different people for questions or successes. Like, it's been a really great way to just bring together a lot of our customers. And so that's been really awesome. And I think overall, just like everybody else, at the start of a full year ago now in March 2020, a lot of things were so uncertain as to where it would go, even for us. And what we actually noticed was that as a lot of our customers started transitioning from kegs into bulk production of bottles and cans, we actually started seeing an uptick in sales because a lot of customers realized that now that they're getting into this world of selling cans and bottles and inventory, that they need better logistics management solutions. They need better ways to track invoices, better ways to actually go and see what's happening for packaging rather than just spreadsheets, because now they're working with bigger distributors or working with other people for like self-distribution. And so these were all ways that we kind of started helping out the community at that point. And it really led to a lot of nice discussions about some cool new features and updates and integrations that customers wanted to see. And it really allowed us to have some bandwidth and some runway to actually start working with these people and start really listening to our brewery customers as to what were some of the biggest improvements they wanted to see in our system.
Not that you wouldn't always have a dialogue with your customers, but how much do you think this increased the engagement that goes on between you and breweries?
I think overall it's about the same. We have always been a fully virtual company, and it's always been great to have developers across the country, having breweries across the country, across the world kind of thing. So in our end, about 40% of our business is in Australia. And so just having virtual conferences or virtual meetings like that, I think that's the biggest aspect that would be awesome to see more of in even international markets, and having more virtual conferences like what you set up with Craft Professionals. But overall, with our one-on-one customers, that's been exactly the same, because we used to do remote onboardings, remote trainings, remote things like that. And we also use WhatsApp for customer support, and every single one of our customers is available in WhatsApp in their channel. And so that also adds a nice level of connection between each of us and customers, because between me, Ryan, and our team members, we're in a 24/7 mode where somebody's always available to reach out to. And so it's really cool to have that sense of communication. And so sticking with the channels, and to Doug's point, right, that element of Zoom fatigue changing into, oh, let's just have a quick WhatsApp chat, or hey, show me your brewery, right? Like yesterday I did an onboarding with a brewery in Panama, and it was so cool. The guy just pulled it up on his phone and was giving me a tour of his brewery and the outside garden and things, and it was awesome because it's so cool to see just how people are doing stuff during COVID to just keep on expanding their business and keep on growing. And so it's been really great to just see our customers come up with all these awesome canning releases, and just these specialty things that they're doing, just trying to engage one. It's been great to be a part of that.
Absolutely. I think one thing the pandemic has done is essentially dared us to dare, to test the boundaries and find new ways to connect and grow our own businesses. Now, Kyle, how about yourself? I know we talk quite a bit, but what are some of the ways you've been able to engage and maintain relationships with breweries through the pandemic?
It's been really tough. And the reason being is I'm in Toronto, and the public health measures have been much more strict. There's been no indoor dining, no tap rooms for over 200 days. And they just said that it was going to be extended by another 30 days at the least. So you can't visit people. You can't go for a beer. I can't get a sandwich. I have to eat in my car. So it's been very challenging. And but people are managing to work around that. So one thing that I have been doing is, for the last 6 months or so, I've been helping Canada's only Black-owned brewery reconfigure. So they were a brew pub downtown in the core last September, October.
What is the name of the brewery, Kyle?
Mascot Brewing Company in Toronto. So they had a brew pub downtown on a very busy touristy street. That there's no busy tourism for the last 12 months. So last fall they basically said, we can't do a stop-go approach to business. We can't wait for the public health officer to say, yes, it's okay to open up, or no, it's not okay to open up. And they basically said, we're going to change our business model and we started working on how to go from a brew pub model to more of a manufacturing and distribution model. So we've moved a lot of the production out to the suburbs. And it's been interesting because there's been a lot of other small companies do it, and not beer, but there's his neighbor that was downtown who owned Italian restaurants. He's opened up a little pasta plant. There's been down the street, there's a natural seltzer company. So it's been really cool to see all these people that are still really passionate about food and beverage in Toronto. They basically said it's like we can't operate a restaurant, and we won't be able to for the next who knows how long. So it's instead of giving those people those experiences at home or in your established environment, it's been like direct to consumer sales, direct delivery, those type of services. And yeah, it's been challenging. It's been really challenging because most people are just like, I can't. They like that, and they're trying to figure out how to just survive. And we also have a very unique distribution model here in. We have socialized alcohol distribution. So that basically means you can sell directly to as a brewery, you're fortunate you can sell directly to the consumer. But it was only last week that they said, oh, maybe we'll let you sell at farmers markets now. And where most states and jurisdictions would be like, well, that's a no-brainer. You should be able to sell wherever. You have to pretty much sell to the state here in Ontario for the most part. So it's been challenging. The margins have been very narrow. The stress has been very high. But being able to start to rebuild communities, even though it's not a craft beer community, it's kind of like a food and beverage and entrepreneurial type community. That's been really fun to see. And it's like every day we're like, okay, we can just last a couple more weeks. We can keep doing this. We can keep building. And it's exciting what can happen because you have basically a new hub of food and beverage people in one of the largest cities in North America building this community and all supporting each other. Like there's a coffee roaster two doors down. I'm doing a coffee stout with them at some point. It's that type of community building that's going to be really important in the next 2 to 3 years, because even if everyone gets vaccinated tomorrow, the jobs aren't coming back tomorrow. The spending money isn't coming back tomorrow. It's going to take a long time to rebuild what those communities were. So I'm really happy that not everyone has just said, no, I'm moving out to who knows where in the countryside to not deal with it. Everyone's really trying to preserve the culinary culture of Toronto.
That's very interesting. It sounds like you've had a unique perspective during the pandemic to get, insight from both the brewery side, but also your side as a industry supplier.
Well, but I started off in the brewing side. That's where I started, and it's you always have a longing for it still, and it's kind of funny. It's like I've brewed very rarely on my own equipment, and I want to change that because that's the best way to. It's only, I guess, in brewing equipment with these huge facilities that you don't really have an option to keep testing before you release it. You build it and then you test it and then you figure out what the problems are. Very few industries operate like that. So
interesting. Thanks for sharing that. Now let's look at the 4 of your businesses, because obviously it's been a challenging year for breweries. It's been great that so many communities have stood behind their breweries and supported them more than we even expected. But I'd like to ask the 4 of you, what has been your greatest challenge through this pandemic?
I can start.
Mine is probably pretty quick and easy. Mine was quickly, getting in touch with people and letting them know, hey, you can reach out and work with people and do demos and stay in connection with your people. So that was my biggest challenge, was getting the word out to everyone.
Understood. Now, Kyle, I know you were getting ready to jump into that as well.
Yeah, so logistics has been a huge challenge at this last 12 months. It was almost kind of operating on like a razor's edge before in terms of stability. It's only gone worse. And about 8-10 months ago, a lot of people were basically saying, I can't rely on my suppliers in Asia. I can't rely on my partners in Mexico. They started going back to more local manufacturing, which is really huge in my opinion, because that's going to be an important debate for the next several decades, everyone's aware on how fragile international logistics are, because we literally had one boat anchor itself in the wrong spot and 15% of commerce stopped. And
Matt, are you involved at all with the boat in the Suez Canal?
this is the one instance. Like I have a little project management bingo chart just to keep myself high spirited at times. And when the hurricane hit Texas several years ago, all of my brewery pumps were under 3 inches of water. I've had forest fires, I've had labor disputes, and this is like the first time that I'm just basically like, I don't have to worry about this. Pirates is somewhere on there, but I haven't ticked off that box yet. I don't know when I'm going to have to deal with pirates, but I figure that's going to happen at some point. So, yeah, like I don't think people understand how fragile some of these systems are, because it's one boat in the wrong place at the wrong time, and everything stopped because of it.
That's a really great point there.
The shipping has affected us, and that's kind of been the odd roller coaster that 2020 and into 21 has turned into. When COVID first really hit strong, we had a 50% cut in sales, right, like that. We had POs being pulled up from under us, and you can't blame them, because for a while barrel aging was the luxury. You don't need to have a barrel aged beer to run a brewery. You just need some cans and bottles and kegs. And barrel aging was the for fun thing, the luxury thing. So when that all hit, people all of a sudden were pulling their orders, canceling orders left and right. And but then this really weird thing happened where they were saying, wait, stop making the beers we're gonna age and release this spring, this coming fall, because we don't know what this coming fall is going to be. But then just as quick as everyone did that, everyone was like, well, wait a minute. We have all of our winter beers that we haven't sold through yet. We have our stouts and our porters that this is the season we're selling them, and we're coming into summer and everything's closed. What are we going to do with them? So we actually then all of a sudden had a change in gears over a couple of weeks, where a lot of brewers were like, well, wait a minute, and we started really brainstorming with these brewers and talking about the financial side of barrel aging and how much of an investment barrel aging actually is. And we have some reports and some statistics that I've put together over the past few years, but it shows if you take for example, a 750 milliliter bottle of beer, putting that into a barrel for any amount of time suddenly adds an additional $5 to $10 of retail value to that bottle. And we broke it all. We luckily we already had all the data where we broke it all down and showed what kind of investment barrel aging is. So we actually had a number of breweries, and then at the same time the breweries were like, well, shoot, we have this beer that's just going to go bad and we're going to lose money. And we're like, well, we've got all these barrels sitting here that are just going to go bad and we're going to lose money. So we kind of just pulled a Hail Mary and we're like, listen, here's what we paid for the barrels, and we started selling barrels at cost. Because we're like, it's not going to do us any good for them to go bad sitting here. It's not going to do you any good for your beer to go bad. Let's try and meet in the middle. We sold a ton of barrels for pretty much at cost to get them in the brewers' hands. And then as things slowly started to open up a little bit, late summer into fall, and they started releasing these beers and making more money off of them instead of dumping them down the drain. That's when a lot of the brewers started to see barrel aging from not just that for fun luxury thing to try and one up your neighbor, but, oh, hey, wait a minute. This is a real business investment that we're making here with this wood. And then as other countries started opening up their commerce, at different rates than we did, that's where the real shipping crisis started. And for the past 6 months, the freight networks in this country have just been an absolute disaster, to put things lightly. And we've been, and really it's not any one individual's fault, but shipping containers that we use to import and export barrels to and from overseas, those are hard to come by. And even just, some of the freight companies are just overwhelmed. We had a pallet that was heading from here to New Jersey, a 2-day ship, and it ended up, after 2 weeks, it ended up in Oregon, couldn't get any further away, And then they were like, well, we'll just send it back to you, the Cooperage, and we'll refund the money if you could just send them some fresh barrels. So we sent the customer fresh barrels on our dime. And then the shipping company didn't send the barrels to us. They sent them to the customers. Now the customer's sitting there with double the amount of barrels. And we're just like, we give up. Just do something with them. We don't know. But yeah, it's been crazy, especially on the international side, import, export. Now we're kind of coming into that aspect of it. We're trying to play catch up there. And of course, while the Suez Canal has nothing to do with, very little to do with United States commerce, but the fact that you had hundreds of container ships sitting there stuck, because of the block off, and each of those hundreds of container ships have thousands of containers on them. Suddenly, it's like not being able to buy cardboard boxes. The can shortage. It's literally a can shortage, except from the shipping industry.
Earlier this year, I was trying to bring over a container from East Asia, and my partners in China were basically like, there are no containers in East Asia. And I'm like, what do you mean there's no containers in East Asia? They're like, a lot of them, it was a couple of small steps where a lot of them had to be retired because they rust with the seawater over time, and they had a higher number that needed to be retired that year. Production of sea cans was down because of production restrictions. And then the third curveball was that Americans were buying more Chinese goods than the other way around. So over 6 months, you have containers slowly going from East Asia to the United States and then not going back. And they basically said, but I need my stuff. I need to finish these projects. I can only get paid until this equipment's in place. And they basically said, we don't care how much money you're willing to offer us. We physically can't get you containers. They're just like, we can't do it. And I'm just like, well, have to wait. There's nothing you have to wait. There's nothing you can do about that.
Yeah. On our end, one of the unfortunate things as well, like I mentioned we had some breweries that were picking up. We did have some that were shut down, and others that, a brewery out in Brazil, a brewery in Ireland, especially more international markets that we've seen that just completely shut down, had no sales happening, bars are closed. Kind of, Kyle, what you were saying, that it took a hit on some customers completely, especially if they were mainly focused on just kegging sales and didn't have that flexibility to do mobile canning or mobile bottling. We did have a number of customers that shut down. And so trying to basically work together with that to kind of let them understand how we could help them, giving them discounts, giving them a couple of free months where they could still keep using our software to still keep tracking their data, right? Because if at some point you just stop tracking information in a platform, it becomes homework where you're not going to go in and spend, an entire week putting in 3 months worth of backlog data. It's just not going to happen. And so at that point, it was really just trying to be accommodating to our customers when it happened and saying, hey, what can we do to help out, reaching out to them and just going from there to really help them understand that we're with them on this and doing what we can to help them keep tracking their production. Because for the breweries that kept on increasing production, that was great. But the other ones that did shut down, it was really unfortunate to experience that with them.
No, thanks for sharing the challenges you four have faced. Now, we've all faced those business challenges, whether you're an industry supplier, whether you're just providing a service, whether you're a brewer yourself. We've all had a really challenging year. We've had to pivot. We've had to innovate. We've had to do all those little buzzwords. But personally, the past year has definitely taken its toll mentally on all of us. It's been tough. And I know, Doug, you mentioned earlier about Zoom fatigue, and yet I have you in front of a camera right now. So I take responsibility for causing some of that. But, we've faced a lot of challenges personally with less human interaction, going out much less than in the past year. How have the four of you managed to step away from your work, unwind, and clear your mind? That way, when it comes the next day, you're ready to go again. What are the best suggestions you've taken in your own life to kind of keep that mental health and keep a little sanity going on?
I've started running and just going for daily walks and things. It's been really nice to just head out the house. Like I mentioned, I did get my first shot and have my second one scheduled for later this month. So looking forward to a little bit of more normalcy coming into May and June. But no, I think the biggest thing for me was I had to get out of the house. It was, you have your computer, you have your bedroom, it's all just in one location, and just figuring out ways to just exercise, get fresh air, go to the beach, things like that, and just stay away from people kind of thing. But, do what you can to at least just get some movement happening. Otherwise, you're just sitting at your computer all day and just working. And I actually got into the habit of blocking out my calendars for these different things, because otherwise it wouldn't get done. And so scheduling meetings around an hour block for like lunch, an hour block for dinner, or something like that, just so that way I have that time blocked off. Or sometimes I do end up still working through it, but at least it's working on my own things rather than having meetings during that time frame.
No, that's great insight right there. Matt, how about you? Because you're on mute right now. How have you been managing to kind of take a little time for yourself?
Actually, this is kind of it. So but many people don't know. I'm actually a full-time firefighter and a paramedic. So, which to me, like the barrel thing, this is the fun job. This is what I get to do when I'm not screaming around in ambulances and fire trucks. So I mean, we've been, and trust me, I do not mean this in any way to toot anyone's horn, but we've been on the absolute front of the front lines with COVID. We've been dealing with it. Our working conditions at the fire stations have taken a complete 180. We've been, we're coming into contact with COVID positive people daily and needing to, suddenly we're in these full isolation suits, which is just, it's been a lot. So, cortisol meter's just been kind of like redlined. And this is it. I get off my shift and I, go home and clean up and take a shower. I come into the office and I kind of, play around with the computer and jump on things with this. Like you said, scheduling is definitely helping a lot. I used to just kind of wing stuff, but with so much more happening on the internet, I think I stole. We steal a lot from each other, Andrew. But I think one of the things I stole from you is the coffee with a Cooper. So the Calendly in my signature, I just have every email I send. It says, "Hey, you want to take 15 minutes to just chat about barrels? Click this link, schedule yourself into my calendar, and let's do it." And that's been really nice because we don't have that one-on-one interaction anymore like we do, at all the trade shows. So it's cool. And I've actually had some really good brewers who are just good friends over the years, and they've scheduled a thing, and I call them up and they're like, "Yeah, we don't really want to talk barrels. We just want to know how you're doing. How's things? By the way, we're pregnant. By the way, this is what we're doing." And it's been a great way to just catch up with people. And then we've been getting creative with the swag and just throwing swag around at people and shipping it to them, just to kind of bring some light to the whole situation.
No, that's great. Have you ever had both of your jobs like run into one another? Has there ever been that accident at the brewery involving one of your barrels? Has there any been time where the worlds like collide?
So I guess yes and no. I'm always experimenting down in the shop. So I may have, borrowed a few medical tools here and there to do some experiments on barrels. But I guess the biggest thing that I am pretty proud of is about 4 years ago, the Firefighters Union, which I'm also the president of in my other spare time. We were looking for ways to raise money, and we had a couple new breweries in the city, and one of them was a good customer. Actually, they're all pretty good customer of ours, but one of them, us and the brewery owner, we just clicked really well. And I said, "Hey, listen,
Matt, I have to interrupt you for a second. You're talking about how you potentially combine your barrels with your firefighting job. Did you guys do like a calendar shoot in barrels? Please tell me no."
Listen, what happens on the beach in Argentina stays on the beach in Argentina. You and I have already discussed this. No, what I did do is I said, "Hey, listen, I want to do a collaboration. Firefighters do like their beer a little bit, but most of them they're the Bud Light and Miller Lite drinkers, and a lot of those old crusty guys tip up their nose to the craft beer and all that stuff." So I said, "Listen, let's get these guys into a brewery, because if there's any place other than a fire station that firefighters want to be, it's a brewery. And let's team up and let's make a beer together." And we met with the brewery, and they were like, "You know what? We've wanted an excuse to make a brown ale, and we really think a brown ale would go well with this smoked malt we've started to get." And we're like, "Great, smoke, firefighters, brown ale, bright red can, perfect." And we did it. The release night, the brewer called me up the next day, and of course I was joking about how much firefighters can consume beer. He calls me up the next day. He's like, I just got, I was just reaming out my bartenders for putting kegs in the wrong place. And then I realized all the empties were in the right place. And you guys drank a lot of beer last night. I'm like, I know, I told you. So, but ever since then, it goes out to local distro around New England, and it's a cool little fundraiser for us. It's our charitable funds aspect in the firefighters union that we raise money and then we give that money back to the community. So when someone's house burns down 3 weeks before Christmas, we use that money to go buy them all brand new Christmas presents, and we give money to the food bank when they're doing their annual Thanksgiving dinner and stuff like that. So it is what all of us are here. It's a community aspect. So it's fun for us. It's our stress reliever. While most of our brewery customers, they get stressed out in the brewery, for the firefighters, it's their stress reliever to go hang out in a brewery, help make a beer, raise some money, good cause, and it's all just a win-win for everybody.
No, I absolutely love that. It's a great initiative. Now, Doug, how about you? How have you been able to unwind over the past 12 months?
Well, it's kind of a combination of what Pulkit and Matt said. I think it is real important to take some time, and for me, it's very early in the mornings for just quiet reflection. The other thing I did was I've got a standing desk. And so I've got a standing desk both where I do a lot of my computer work and here in the studio. I think that's really important because it keeps you mobile. All my years in aerospace, I did not have one, and I regret it now because you get lethargic, or at least I did. And at a standing desk, you think of something, you get up, walk over, and go, and you come back, and so you keep your heart rate up, and it's I find it a lot more interesting. The third thing is actually events like this, not Zoom calls with the same people every day, but Zoom calls with people you've never met before. So Pulkit and I had never really, we've exchanged conversation, but we've not actually talked before. Matt, I've got a fascination. I'm a scuba diver also, and I love what he's doing with the Cooperage. Kyle's got some great stories on the equipment, and Andrew, you and I talk fairly often. So, all this is very stimulating. I mean, we've traveled, even though we can't travel mentally. So I think, getting started early and having some quiet time, having the ability to stay active at your desk with a standing desk helps. And then I think calls outside of your normal Zoom calls. So Andrew, I appreciate you creating this opportunity because at least for me, I got to travel a little bit this morning.
I got to see a bar in London, right, Doug? No,
Yes,
calls like this are one of my absolute favorite things as well, because we all, as I keep saying, crave human interaction. So if I can put 5 essential strangers in a room, we might know of one another, but we don't have the opportunity to always connect or have a beer together. To put us in a room, it's almost the best we can do, one, without having a beer in our hand right now, but without actually being in a tap room together. And I truly miss those experiences. So hopefully before too long, the 5 of us are really sharing a beer together in a tap room that's not a virtual location. But Kyle, you're the only one we haven't heard from so far. I'd love to hear a little bit about how you're able to separate, because you're a busy person these days.
So when do I get a chance to separate?
Well, one thing I've learned about you just by seeing your Facebook wall, you don't like just beer. You actually are very interested in making drinks with liquor. Is that something you have taken as a hobby during the pandemic, or was that a love of yours prior to all of this?
This is an old hobby of mine because shortly after I got trained at the BJCP and I've done several national competitions over the years, and I just started there's at one point where sometimes the products on the shelves were very inconsistent or very problematic in terms of beer, and I kind of changed gears a little bit because I would say I'm only going to buy beer if it's been stored cold and I know it's been stored cold, or I'm going to buy beer directly from the brewery itself, where I don't like buying beer from the state stores really. So I started looking more into spirits because the craft distillery industry is still very young here where I'm at, and it's also a 5-minute feedback loop. If with beer, you make the beer, okay, 4 weeks later, you can try it. And so, but when you spent your whole day at the brewery, you still have those same creative impulses. You don't want to wait 4 weeks. You don't want to spend a whole day brewing and then wait 4 weeks to find out what that idea tastes like. For me, cocktails is just boom, 5 minutes, test out the idea. I don't want to show anyone my current bottle collection because it's pretty large at the moment. But I started I set up like a little light box in my second bedroom because I haven't had a roommate since this whole thing started, and I just started taking pictures of the cocktails that I would come up with. And I don't have any brand sponsorships yet, but I have a couple of people resharing the cocktail recipes, so that's always nice. And I just do the quick cocktail, put the recipe online, say how I got to that recipe, and they're nothing fancy. I don't like the idea of the big elaborate 16 ingredient stuff. I'm kind of a brewer at heart when it comes to spirit. Well, you have 4 ingredients in beer, you might as well cap it out at 4 ingredients in cocktails, and that's how I approach it. And it gives you 5 minutes of creativity that you can share with people.
And the pictures you post look delicious. Unfortunately, having a toddler myself, I don't have a lot of time to drink as much as I once did. So all the pictures that you put up there only give me inspiration for, future years when I have a little more time on my hands to consume more than just craft beer in my life.
But that's the nice thing about spirits is you can choose how complicated you want to get. So one of my favorite books is called The 12 Bottle Bar, and the basic argument is no, you need a gin, a vodka, a whiskey, a couple of bitters, a couple of vermouths. That's it. You don't need dozens of bottles to do it at home. So just slowly build up, slowly learn. And it takes 5 minutes. Like an old fashioned, anyone can make an old fashioned at home. It's a very low barrier to entry.
Kyle, can you do me a favor? Don't tell my girlfriend that you only need 12 bottles.
Okay.
I got her convinced they're all necessary.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate the 4 of you joining today because this has been great to connect, just have a little human interaction. The fun thing, as I mentioned, is when you throw 5 strangers together, never know where the conversation is going to go. I mean, today we talked about everything from spirits to shipwrecks to, the challenges we faced during the pandemic. And these are the moments that I enjoy the most over the past year. And when I organized the last conference we did in October, I initially asked every single presenter to schedule a practice session with me where we would go over the StreamYard platform that we use for the conference. And as soon as I sent that email out, I was like, oh no, why did I do this to myself? Now I have 50 different 30-minute sessions with like all these people who were presenting at the conference. And why didn't I just do like 3 and give the opportunity to come at 3 separate times on 3 separate days at different intervals of time? But then I realized once I started having those conversations that those 50 individual conversations that I had were my favorite part of the entire conference, because I don't want to use the word forced, but it had me connect with 50 people I wouldn't have necessarily taken the time to talk to during that point in my life. And it kind of planted the seeds for a lot of great relationships, allowed me to connect with people that, I had already met prior. And it was truly my favorite part of the conference. And during the conference, I truly don't get to enjoy it as much as you guys do on the watching end. It's logistically speaking, just a lot of work going on. And I always go back and rewatch all the videos. But that pre-conference preparation was my absolute favorite part of the event because it gave me that human interaction. So Doug, Pulkit, Kyle, and Matt, I really appreciate you, hanging out with me today. And Doug, I know you've got an exciting event going on tonight. I'm going to pull up the screen real quick and let you give a little shout out to that.
Yeah, for those that are interested, this is, of course, a little bit different than beer, but it's about Justin Doggett has tremendous expertise in making a cold brew coffee concentrate. And so he has some breweries using this to infuse this in their beers to get a coffee flavor. And I've been really impressed with what he's doing. So we're going to be talking about that tonight. It's a great chance to ask him questions. And it's just one of the most precise ways that I've seen to infuse coffee flavors into wonderful beers. And, because it's a very predictable way to do it. You can titrate out exactly how much coffee flavor you want to put in it.
And Doug, for anyone interested in joining you tonight, how can they join you?
Where can I put the link? That's the best
We can
way to
drop it
join
the
in.
comments. I'll pop it in the comments right now.
Okay.
Awesome. And for everybody, who's watching or listening after the fact, our spring conference, once again, will be April 19th, 20th, and 21st, 11 a.m. Eastern until 6 p.m. Eastern each day. We have 50 plus fantastic industry experts sharing their wisdom with you. So get excited. If you can't watch it live, you can check it on YouTube following. Our community is 100% free. The conference is 100% free. All content is available forever. Once again, thanks to Precision Fermentation, River Drive, Cooperage, and White Labs for being such huge supporters of craft beer professionals. And Doug, Pulkit, Kyle, and Matt, once again, thanks for hanging out with me today. This has been a lot of fun. I hope you've enjoyed your break from your work. Now go seize the day and stay busy. So everybody, talk to you later.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Enjoy.